Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
Welcome back into the Dynasty Nerds Podcast. Rich is in his coffin, so it's just me and Matt. Matt, how's it going?
I mean, it's going good. It's going a lot better than Rich, man. When we saw him, he was quite distraught about the hard labor that he had to do today. So I'm glad
like it.
I'm glad he's taking off because he needs to rest up. Clearly,
yes. Heal all those ailments.
He needs an ice bath.
So
like one of these guys after the game. That's what. That's what he should be doing.
Yeah, dude, I hated those.
I think
hated them.
Rich is talking about, going to lay down in a coffin. I think I would have to go into a coffin because I would die. I had never done an ice bath, and I think I would die if I did.
I struggled just doing like my feet. Like I struggled just with my feet doing it. Whole body is next level. I've done it twice, and I maybe lasted 3 to 5 minutes at most. I don't know how long you're supposed to be in there, but I couldn't make it longer than 3 minutes.
I once swam at the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, and I don't know if you've ever been up that high up there. It's different. It was September, so I mean it had been all summer. That lake had heated up as much as it possibly could at the beginning of September, and I got into the middle of my thighs and turned around. I was like, this is it, man. My whole body is seizing up. I'm having convulsions. I'm not going any farther than this, and I got out of that water.
So you're not a polar plunge guy, that's for sure.
No, hell no. And the weird thing is I swam in Lake Erie in April once when I was younger. I don't know if it's just because I'm older now. It was cold then. But I think when you're a kid, you can get away with that kind of crap. I'm old now, man. Heck no. Middle of my thigh, I turned around and was like, nope. This is not for me.
Nope. This is not getting to the testes.
Exactly.
Not letting that happen. All right. Well, let's we're doing the buys and sells a little bit different. Normally we just have a few players that are buys, a few players that are sells. I thought we would mix it up a little bit this week. And we're asking the question, is this player a buy or a sell? Because on the surface, it's not super clear. And most of these guys have seen, actually all these guys, I should say, have seen drastic fluctuations in their value from what we would have thought of them a while ago. And so is this one of those scenarios where you buy at that current point, or has it changed so much that it shifts? So let's start with the first one here, Jonathon Brooks. Now, I tried to find some good trades. I think everyone is terrified to trade Jonathon Brooks at the moment. So I couldn't really find any good trades since the trade deadline. So I threw one in there, but it's tough because there's so many moving parts and pieces to it that it made it really, really hard to figure out what his value is. All the other ones have like good data points. This was the one guy I was like, man, even other people don't know what they want to do with this guy. So for you right now, would you consider Jonathon Brooks somebody that you want to attack and try to acquire? Or is the contract to Chuba and his performances lately scared you off to a point that you would much rather get out from underneath him?
This is an interesting one, right? And I'm glad.
Yeah.
This is kind of like my segment, right? Is he a buy or a sell? We used to do like set amounts of buys and sells, and I used to just run out. And occasionally I'd be like, listen, I want to talk about this guy because I don't know if he's a buy or sell. And I was trying to figure this out myself. And I used to bring these kind of guys kind of to those discussions. So I do kind of feel like this is maybe my right up my wheelhouse here. But Jonathon Brooks is really difficult to figure out because Chuba Hubbard, not a guy that I loved coming out of college or anything like that, and obviously was buried a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when Miles Sanders was brought to this team. But Miles Sanders underperformed. They go out and draft a guy in Jonathon Brooks in the second round, so everyone thinks, hey, we saw a glimpse of Chuba last year and he looked okay. but they drafted Jonathon Brooks, and he's the guy that's going to be the heir apparent, and no matter what, because he was the first running back off the board, second round of the draft, blah 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 blah. Chuba Hubbard gets this contract extension, and has been performing out of this world, compared to everyone's, or at least compared to my expectations. I think, what is he sitting at right now? He is running back 6. He was the guy that I was thinking about when I was talking about in the last show, Chase Brown.
Yeah.
Chuba Hubbard sitting there at running back 6 overall, and just got a 4-year, $33 million or something like that contract extension.
Yeah. And basically like 2 more or less guaranteed years.
Right. And Miles Sanders gets injured this past week, and really it's going to naturally flow to the Jonathon Brooks and Chuba Hubbard kind of tandem, where before I would have thought, hey, Jonathon Brooks is the guy and Chuba Hubbard's going to be this kind of ancillary, piece that comes in and spells him. I'm not sure of that anymore. I don't know how you feel about this. I don't know. I honestly don't even know what to do with Jonathon Brooks. Obviously, if I had him and I drafted him, I'm holding him. I'm waiting to see what's happening. I'm in this group of people that is terrified to trade him. But if I'm in a rebuild situation, I'm kind of interested to see if I can buy dip. So
sure,
because Chuba, he's a good player. I don't necessarily think he's a great player. And if Jonathon Brooks can return to the player that we saw kind of pre-draft, pre-injury, I think there's a spot for him to beat out Chuba in the next 2 years and kind of take this job over. So that's kind of how I see him. If that makes sense, I don't know. How do you see a guy like that?
It makes perfect sense. And this one is going to be like, I could see a scenario where in one league I buy Jonathon Brooks and in another league I sell him, all depending on how does my league view Jonathon Brooks. Because if I'm able to just sell Jonathon Brooks for what I paid, which would have been a late first, if somebody's willing to give me a late first for Jonathon Brooks, okay, I'll reset the deck and I'll try again in this year's class and hope that I do just as good, if not better, at the running back position in this year's class. If it is only a second, well, now I'm willing to buy for a second round pick. I think the correct value is Jonathon Brooks in a second, like a mid to late second for a first. Like, I think that's the correct value. So if I can get on either end of that, I'm willing to take like those kind of risks. And I think those are probably the extremes. I don't think we're going to see much outside of that. Nobody's doing a third. Like, that's ridiculous. But also nobody's giving you more than a first at this point because they're all terrified. So I think those are kind of the extremes. And I think the correct value for me is probably Jonathon Brooks in a second for a first is probably the right value.
And that, I mean, that makes sense. I don't know. I don't know where I would be at if somebody offered me that. How about that? Like if it was my first,
sure.
Cause gosh, if I'm in a rebuild, I'm not giving my first for him. You're right. I would just hold on to it. So if I'm in a rebuild, there's no way in hell I'm taking any, this is supposed to be a good running back class. I'll just see if I can get something that's a little less muddy in a class that is supposedly pretty deep in that position. So yeah, that's a tough one. Jonathon Brooks still, even though he's on this and we're discussing it, I do think it's going to be very specific to your league and to the values and to what you want to do and you kind of how you feel about the risk factor there. So yeah, I feel good about it 3 years from now. I don't feel great about it the next 2 years. I feel like it's going to be some murky, muddy waters for the next couple of years.
And that's Brooks. Hard to wait 3 years for any player, but especially a running back. Like if it's a quarterback, okay, like I can do it, but a running back 3 years, that's tough to do, man. That's tough to do.
Yep.
Let's go to another rookie. We touched on him a little bit last show. Caleb Williams. I know you were not the biggest. Honestly, you weren't high on really any quarterback in this class, honestly, other than Bo Nix. Like, basically everybody else, you're like, whatever.
Listen, I was not whatever on it. On all of them. Bo Nix was just the guy I liked more than you guys liked. I was
Than everybody else.
I was in there with the rest of you. But Caleb Williams just had some traits that, and I still ended up having him my number one guy. He just had some traits that I was concerned about, and you're seeing those concerns pop up now in the program, specifically in the last couple of weeks where he's kind of reverting back to some stuff. So, I have a hard time with bailing. He's got talent, and we're going to see if the offensive coordinator truly was the issue there or not.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to lean to things are just moving too fast for him right now, and that's why he's falling back on some bad things, and hopefully some stuff will start to slow down and click into place. That being said, if somebody is seeing what I'm seeing, but seeing through it and sees more out of him, I think I'd be willing to move on from him. Because
there's two interesting trades. I thought of all the trades I found, I thought these ones were some of the most compelling of all the players. And so we're not going to go through all the trades for all the players, but these ones I thought were really interesting. So one of them, it's Caleb Williams and Jaden Reed for Drake May and Tank Dell. The other one was Caleb Williams for 225 first. So either one of those speak to you as like you feel strongly on one side or the other there, Matt?
So listen, I would take the Caleb Williams, Jaden Reed side. And
okay,
that one for me would have had to have been the other way with the wide receivers for me to like.
Okay. So you still have Caleb slightly ahead of Drake May in your rankings.
I still do. And
okay.
But that's not to say that's going to be there for long. If I continue to see what I've been seeing with this new offensive coordinator, there's a very real possibility that Caleb Williams can trend down and Drake May can leapfrog him. So I think it's a story of Caleb going down, Drake May going up, but they just kind of haven't crossed yet for me. And
so if somebody offered you straight up, you have Caleb Williams and they said, I'll give you Drake May for him, you would still say, I'm going to hold Caleb for now.
Yes, I would say that.
Okay.
Okay. So this would, like I said, I have Jaden Reed much higher than Tank Dell. So if they were flipped the other way,
sure, that's what.
If it was Drake May and Jaden Reed and versus Caleb Williams, Tank Dell, I would take the Drake May side because I think that would just entice me enough. So I would still need a little bit on top of May instead of having it the other way.
No, that makes perfect sense. What about the two firsts?
The two firsts,
and we don't know what pick they are. That's what makes it tough. But let's say they're both, middle of the pack type picks. One you expect to be 104, the other one 107. Like what would you do with that?
It's tough because it's not stacking up to be a great quarterback draft.
It's not.
So I wouldn't expect to get a quarterback back because if people are quarterback needy up at top, the top two guys would be gone by the time I'd be drafting with those two picks. So if I'm on a team that still needs to fill that quarterback void, there's no way I'm taking 2 first-round draft picks for Caleb Williams. I'd much rather just hold, see what I get with my own. Yeah, just hope he hits and see what I get with my own first-round draft pick instead of like pulling 3 first-round draft picks out in next year's draft, which is a running back heavy draft. Like it's hard to load up in a running back heavy draft unless you're about.
It's not a rebuilder draft. It's more of a contender draft where you're like, I can find that extra piece.
Yeah. Yeah. So that one's difficult for me.
Yeah.
So I don't think I would do that. I would stick with Caleb Williams personally. How about you on either one of these?
Yeah. I think the Drake May one is tough for me because I have gotten to the point where I've moved him ahead, but I was also the highest on Drake May in our group as well. Correct. So that's not a surprise that I would be the guy that would be there the quickest. So that's what makes that tough for me. I do think I still have Jaden Reed high enough above Dell. That's where it's like really a coin flip trade for me. where I still probably would go Caleb because I still have Drake and Caleb back to back. And I still think for as much as I like Drake May and as much as he has really, really impressed me, especially for the lack of help, he's still not a perfect polished prospect. Like I still see him making some mistakes. I still see like there's things there where he does still have a longer windup. He still does take some hits that I don't really want him to, even though he can handle that better than some of these other guys can. Like there's still things there. So I think the difference between Reed and Dell is large enough that I would take the Caleb and the Reed side. And yeah, I'm 100% with you. Like the 2 first wouldn't be enough to move me off Caleb Williams. Let's go to Dak Prescott. Most of these guys we're talking about are younger. This guy's the older guy here. Is this the time where you say, hey, maybe the value's depressed a little bit because of the injury? I'm gonna swoop in and get it. Or are you saying, I've ridden this train long enough. I gotta get out. Like it just isn't improving as much as I would like for it to. And I think that's probably more a real world scenario. I think most people that have had Dak Prescott have seen, last year he was quarterback 3 on the year. So he was great for you for fantasy last year. So I think it's more of the actual real NFL narrative more so than the fantasy narrative, but those things still bleed together whether we like it or not. Like people still have those feelings. It's those that can kind of remove themselves from the real life to just look at fantasy that do a little bit better with that. But where are you on Dak? Like, is this a time where you're like, okay, a little bit of a depressed value because of the injury, I'm going to try to swoop in and get him? Or is it like, man, good riddance if somebody will take him off my hands?
It's hard. He's 31 years old. He's not helping you at all this season. So, he falls into a very odd gray area where you can't make a move for him now if you're a contender because you don't want to be giving up assets to get a guy that's not going to help you this year. But he's also 31, so he doesn't fit great into a rebuild. I mean, and 31 is different at the quarterback position than it is any other position.
Be more like 26-year-old wide receiver. It'd be like that.
Right. It's just, but you would rather have a 24-year-old wide receiver,
right?
And you'd rather have a 27-year-old or 26-year-old quarterback. You know what I mean? Like he just is an odd kind of fit. So I understand why he's on the list. For me personally, I think Mike McCarthy's gone next year, and there's just that adds another level of uncertainty. What the hell is this offense going to look like? Are they going to get another piece to the to the wide receiver core? Because CeeDee Lamb, he's a great player, but he can't be the only guy on the offense. It just hasn't worked this year. They need to get him some help. So not to, I guess, go down too many roads here with going, diving deep into the Dallas Cowboys. But I think it's all relevant to Dak Prescott's value. Like how the hell do you value this guy otherwise? So listen,
I'll say for me. I'll say for me, Matt.
Hold on.
Okay, you got it? Okay.
Yeah. I'm willing to go ahead in the right scenario, even in a rebuild, I would go out and get Dak Prescott because I think that's the only way you're going to be interested, right? And it's got to be at the right price, and which is going to mean the league dynamic. Your league dynamics have to fit this, but if you're only giving up like a first round draft pick in a draft in a year that doesn't have great quarterback play, you can still get 5 years out of this guy pretty easily, I think.
Yeah,
which. I would expect him. The hamstring. This was a bad hamstring. He's going to have surgery, but he should be ready by the start of next year. This isn't like a scenario where he's going to be missing parts of next year. So you'll have him age 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. Just get to 36. That's a good 5-year window. And that's plenty of time to turn around a team and kind of be contending. So yeah, I think Dak Prescott in that light, it can be a buy.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm at as well. I think I would go out And I don't want to say like I'm not going to be overly aggressive, but I'm definitely in my rebuild scenarios, or, if I'm one of those middle of the road teams where I'm like trying to decide which direction to go. And I'm like, do I really have enough? Like, if Dak Prescott was available, like that could turn the tide for me to be like, all right, I'm out for this year. Like, I'll go ahead and go into more of a rebuild mode, because I think he'll be back with me next year. And maybe I'm close enough then to now be more of a contending type team. So I like that kind of scenario where if I'm like that middle of the road, like I'm 4-6, 5-5, I don't really know if I have enough to compete with those top teams. Like, I think he's one of those players that like, okay, my quarterback, I feel great. I got Josh Allen, but my quarterback 2 is flipping between Aaron Rodgers and Daniel Jones. Like, yep. I'm going to feel way better about my quarterback position next year if I bite the bullet, if I give this contender Aaron Rodgers and a second, and I can get Dak Prescott back. That kind of deal might get it done. So
what if you're a rebuild type of team, and let's say you've made a lot of trades already, and you have an abundance of first round draft picks. You have maybe 3 draft picks coming up in this. Would you feel okay parting with a first round draft pick? Let's say somewhere between 5 and 7 for a guy like Dak Prescott.
I would, especially in this class. We did that study. Right now, it's like a 25% chance of those mid-range ones hitting, which we know that's going to normalize a little bit because we're at 50% for the lates, which tell me it's probably just 50% across the board, more or less, is probably the case. So a guy that I know, and the one thing we haven't said at all about this is he finally got that contract we've been waiting for. And that's the thing that gives you that extra confidence. Had he not gotten that deal done preseason, now I'm really scared. But he got the deal done, so he's not going anywhere. So I think that seals it for me.
Yeah, I agree. And
all right, let's get to. We're gonna skip the next one. I'm just gonna say it out loud because it surprised me. I think Tyrone Tracy is still a buy, even though he's been really good lately. Some of these deals I'm seeing, like Cole Kmet for Tyrone Tracy, Calvin Ridley and a 4th for Tracy, like really aren't that close to me. Like, I would much rather have Tyrone Tracy. I don't know.
I wish somebody would offer me Tyrone Tracy and only want my 4th round draft pick and Calvin Ridley back. Like, I really wish that scenario would present itself to me on my contending teams, because I would snap it up in a second.
Like, the best one I found recently was Jackson Smith and Jigba and Jaleel McLaughlin, and you get Tyrone Tracy. And like, if it was just him, it would be close. Like, I could understand that. Like, if I'm a running back away as a contender, like I could see that, but it feels expensive. But then you also got Jalen Waddle back. You're like, oh, easily Jalen Waddle and Tyrone Tracy.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty much slam dunk on most of those trades. So yeah, go out and get Tyrone Tracy. I think, even though he had that fumble that cost him the game, he's still going to be getting the rock, man. He's just too talented.
Absolutely. Let's get to the last one. You mentioned it before. You looked at him as your potential get out before it's too late. That's Mr. Cade Otton. Got a couple trades that I thought were interesting. Cade Otton for Chris Godwin and Dalton Schultz. Got another one. Cade Otton, Amon-Ra St. Brown for Nico Collins, a 2nd, and Tyrone Tracy. So give me your thoughts, because obviously we know what side you kind of fall on this if you were looking at getting out before the getting's good. Like, is this simply I want to capitalize because of these other receivers have been out, or like what's kind of leading you that direction?
It's 100% that. I mean, this Cade Otton's a good player, and Baker likes him. But when there's other, when Mike Evans is on the field, when Chris Godwin's on the field, he just didn't perform at this level or anywhere close to it. It wasn't until they both went down is when he started going berserk. And really, even this past week, just 8.5 points. So he started the year 1.5 points, negative 0.4 points, 9.7, 11.2, 7.4, 9.5, and then it was 18, 29, 21, and then this 8.5. So it was really, a 3-week window where he just blew up and went berserk. And if you can cash in on that, the fact that he's tight end 5 right now on some tight end needy team, I think this is the perfect opportunity because he's going to, Mike Evans is going to be coming back at some point this season. Chris Godwin, he's got a nasty injury and won't be back this year and might not ever be back, but I would expect them to bring somebody else in the offseason if he's not. So it's not going to be the Cade Otton show going forward. You're in this little kind of small window where it is. And if you can cash in and kind of prey on somebody that needs tight end help going into the playoffs, this is the perfect time to do it because Cade Otton's likely to just kind of slip back into the crowd once all these guys are back, and he's going to be somewhere in that tight end 16 to tight end 7 range that we always talk about are just replacement level guys.
Yep. No, I think you're spot on here. I think he is really a player that we've seen a huge shift in value for, and it's just gotten a little too extreme for me to where there's a lot of players that you throw Cade Otton in, and that opens up a door to get a much higher level caliber player. Yeah, you might have to give Cade Otton and something, but still, doors that Cade Otton was never opening before are now available. So I would also be kind of looking to maybe see if I could sell to the right team. But all right, Matt. Well, let's transition then. We're talking about a lot of young guys here, and we're going to continue the trend. But these guys are even younger. In fact, they're still in college. We like to every year at some point midway through the year just touch on the rookies a little bit, or the incoming rookies, the 2025 class. And in fact, our writing staff just recently did a fantastic mock, and they've actually done quite a few mocks. But this is the one that we're going to be looking at is a Superflex tight end premium, or sorry, not tight end premium, Superflex mock draft. They've done some IDP drafts. They've done
this is tight end premium. It was 0.5.
Oh, is this one the tight end premium?
Yeah, it's 0.5 additional points for the tight end, so it's tight end premium.
Perfect.
6 points per touchdown pass is what they did as well.
Love it.
So a little bump there also.
Hey, Nerd Herd, Dynasty Nerds has an incredible new offer from Underdog Fantasy for new customers. When you sign up as a new customer, you'll get a chance at their new customer free pick. But that's not all. Underdog is also offering incredible deposit bonuses. Use the promo code NERDS when you first sign up, and Underdog will give you up to $1,000 in bonus cash with your first deposit. That's right, $1,000 to kickstart your fantasy football journey. Don't miss out on this fantastic opportunity. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app. Sign up today with promo code NERDS and start your journey to fantasy football glory today. Must be 18, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. And in Tennessee, call 1-800-889-9789. Love it. So what I thought we could do here is, Matt, I know you haven't spent as much time with these guys yet, although I think by now you're starting to get pretty familiar with the names and who's who, but you haven't seen a lot of them necessarily. So I'm going to have you kind of lead us down this mock draft, and we'll kind of react a little bit. And obviously I'll do a little more of the talking here, but react a little bit to the picks, if we liked them, if we didn't, but more specifically, how this class looks overall because of where guys are being taken in the selections and that kind of stuff. So just to kind of wet our whistle a little bit on this 2025 class. So Matt, who went 1-1?
Yeah. So I guess before we start, I wanted to mention, if you guys want to follow along, this is an article on our site. It was published 10/28/24. So go check it out. It's a two round Superflex mock draft. I know you kind of touched on some of that, but just want to at least point it out because there are like cool little clips and stuff of the players.
They did a good job with all that.
They really did. So you guys can check this out. But 1-1 Ashton Gentry, right, running back, Boise State, 5'9", 215 pounds. I don't know. I've seen those legs. He might come in at 220. This dude's a beast.
Yeah. No, this one is like the layup pick, even in Superflex right now. It's kind of how Bijan Robinson was last year. Yes, there's other good players, but I don't care what the position is. He's just too good. Like you've got to take Bijan Robinson as the top guy. So it's one of those kind of scenarios with Ashton Gentry, and it helps that it's not as amazing of a quarterback class. But even if it was, it would still be hard not to take Ashton Gentry. This guy's, I don't think he's going to do it, but he's at least in the ballpark of Barry Sanders' single season rushing record, which is something that was thought to be like untouchable. So for him to even like be in the ballpark is pretty darn impressive.
And so in his first 6 games, he went 12, 48, and 17 touchdowns. What is Barry Sanders? What is the record? I don't remember it. Is it?
He's pushing like, it's like just under 3,000 yards. It's something stupid. Let me go back and see exactly what it is.
That's sick. I'll look. You're the one that can do most of the talking. I just didn't know if you knew it off the hand. But listen, I haven't watched it. I haven't watched a ton of this guy. I've seen just some clips here and there and some highlights. But this guy he is fun to watch, and he has all the makings of what you want out of bell cow back. So yeah, I think he definitely, should be in the conversation at 1-1, even in the Superflex. From the little bit that I know, we're typically pretty heavy on going quarterback first. But if there's ever going to be a year, it's going to be one of these goofy years where there aren't a ton of quarterbacks that are kind of sticking their nose out and going above and beyond the rest of this crop. So Ashton Gentry, interesting guy. Can't wait to dig into that tape, because from what I've seen so far, it's going to be fun.
It's fun tape. For what it's worth, 2,628 rushing yards, 37 touchdowns for Barry Sanders in 1988.
Ooh. All right. Barry, man, one of a kind. Let's move on to the second pick here. Shedeur Sanders went 1-2 quarterback, Colorado, 6'2", 215 pounds. Go ahead, Garrett. Take it away from there.
Yeah, I think right now it's kind of come down to Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. I think almost universally people believe those are the top 2 guys. And then there's kind of a new tier where we're talking about other guys. There's still enough of the season, and we've got bowl season as well, where we could see one of these guys jump back into that tier with them. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Say Quinn Ewers, maybe, if he has a really good bowl season and things like that. If
he stops getting benched and stuff like that.
Yeah, things here and there, whatever. He was hurt. He was hurt.
I know.
But all that being said, I think at this point it is going to be those 2 guys at the tippy top. Shedeur Sanders, good athlete, but he's not this. He's not going to be like Jaden Daniels. He's not going to be like Anthony Richardson. He's more of the moves around the pocket to create opportunities for more throws downfield. So think more of Aaron Rodgers type mobility.
Sudden and quick from what I've seen within the pocket, and able to make defenders miss in kind of small areas, which is, I think, an underrated skill in the NFL, because a lot of the times that's what you need to do. You need to be able to navigate within kind of small areas to find a pocket to throw the ball and just kind of a passing lane, so to speak. So I think it all bodes kind of well for Shedeur. We'll see.
And he's got pretty good ball placement. And I just think that there's people wanting to dismiss him just because, like, oh, the hype's just because he's Deion's kid. And like, no, he was a 4-star recruit coming out. It wasn't like he was a no-name guy. Like he's led this Colorado Buffs team that was, I think when it was like plus 30,000 or 3,000. I don't remember what it was. It was some stupid number to win the Big 12 to start the year. And now they're the favorites to win the Big 12 at this point in the season. So they've done a lot with this team, and a lot of that is because of the duo of Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. So I think this is pretty legitimate. He's deserving of being one of the higher tier quarterbacks in this class.
No doubt about it. And from the little bit I've seen, I agree with you. At 1-3, we went to the next quarterback down the list, Cam Ward, quarterback, Miami, 6'2", 233 pounds, a little bit more solid than a Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, this is a player that is a little bit on the older side. He was at a smaller school. I can't recall where it was, but he's transferred multiple times.
Well, it was incarnate. Oh God, I can't say the word. Incarnate word. It's easy for me to say.
And then he went to Washington State.
Yes.
Okay, I couldn't remember the first school. I remembered Washington State. Couldn't remember where he started.
It's in the mock draft. If you guys want to read it and not listen to
there you go.
Stumble over it. Yep.
Look at that. But this year with Miami, they did finally take their first loss this past week. But that being said, he took this Miami team to new heights. I mean, places that I don't think a lot of people necessarily expected them to get to this year, for them to be in this conversation as one of the top tier teams in the country. And that's mostly been Cam Ward. He's a slightly better athlete than Shedeur Sanders, but he's still not somebody that is always looking to run the ball. He's another one of these guys that is looking to pass the ball down the field. He's got a good arm, pretty accurate quarterback, but he can run the football too. I liken it to more of, like that Aaron Rodgers, like I said before, Pat Mahomes, like these types of guys where they're not going to put up 800, 900,000 yard rushing seasons, but they're going to put up 300 yard rushing seasons. They'll put up 400 yard rushing seasons. And that still adds quite a bit to your fantasy football totals over the course of a season. So it's definitely not for nothing. It's going to be tough to decide between those two guys. And so it's not surprising to see them go 1-2 and 1-3 here. But it does open up some potential juice here at 1-4. So excited to talk about this guy.
Before we move on, I wanted to touch on the point that he's a little bit older, and I don't know if you see this the same way I do. I'm starting to think these guys that are 23, 24 and have played a lot of college football might be, I don't know if they have the ceiling in the NFL, but I think they might have a easier transition into the NFL, just seeing more football, you know what I mean, than some of these guys that are 21 and have played 2 or 3 seasons. You know, some of these guys that have played 4 to 5 seasons, you know, due to all this goofy COVID stuff, they seem to be, and transfers, all that. I mean, they seem to be, I don't know, having
more pro ready.
They're just more pro ready. They just seen more ball. So I don't know.
I don't disagree with you.
Not necessarily a bad thing that Cam Ward, it might be a little bit on the older side.
And if you look, even before we were starting to see all the COVID stuff that got wonky, there were plenty of numbers that showed like the correlation of number of starts versus, you know, guys that just only played for a season or a season
like
and a half.
And Anthony Richardson, who you know, balled out for 1 season and has come to the NFL and looked pretty bad. And same thing with, I mean, like Mitchell Trubisky didn't play a ton of college football. And came to the NFL,
it was something like 30 starts was like a big, like kind of benchmark of guys that were kind of performing a little bit better.
That might be an interesting stat that matters type of thing.
Yeah.
Leading up to the draft and all that kind of stuff. It might be
how many starts did they have in college?
Yeah. One to kind of track and look at.
Ooh, I like it. I'm writing it down. All right.
All right. At 1-4. I don't know how to say this guy's actual name. So I'm just going to go Ted McMillan because that's how I've heard him. I don't know how to say his real name though. Do you?
I could attempt, but I have a strong suspicion I would get it wrong.
All right, cool. Ted it is. Ted McMillan, wide receiver, Arizona, 6'5", 212 pounds. 6'5", 212 pounds.
Yeah.
That's borderline getting too tall.
Yeah, he was listed actually at 6'6" for a while, and then all of a sudden it's like 6'5". I wonder if people were saying that, but the fluidity that this guy moves with is very surprising for his size. He does not look like this stiff 6'5", bordering on being a tight end type of player. Like, he's got really good feet, and not surprising, crazy catch radius. And you see some of the one-handed catches and things like that. And he even could do a little bit after the catch too. It's not just go up and get it and then fall down. Like, he could do a little bit. He's not Debo, he's not a guy like that, but he's not just catch the ball and fall down. He has enough there that he can make some plays as well. So it is gonna be fun to like dig deep into his tape, because I've only watched surface level stuff. I haven't gotten nitpicky and that kind of stuff, but overall I've been very pleased with every clip that I've watched, every not all 22, but just broadcast view game that I'll catch, or things like that when I'm watching football late at night or something, when everybody goes to bed, or that kind of stuff. Like, every time I see him, I'm like, man, big guy, he plays smaller in a good way. Like, he plays smaller. So
that could be construed as a negative. So please,
it could, in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way. That his movement skills would suggest he's smaller. His size is still there.
The size is legit.
I haven't seen anything beyond this clip this 30-second clip here, so I'm not going to comment too much. I've got a special place in my heart for wide receivers, and I don't want to jump the gun making any sort of eval on Tet right now. So I'm going to move on to the next pick. At 1.5, Carson Beck, quarterback, Georgia, 6'4", 220 pounds, kind of a more typical pocket passer type of guy, correct?
Yep, and it's been it's been 2 weeks since this mock did come out, and unfortunately, these past 2 weeks have been rough for Carson Beck. So I can't knock my guy Matthew Mitchell, because this pick would have looked a lot better a couple weeks ago than it does right now. But right now, especially with the lack of rushing upside that this guy has, in today's NFL, you need to be a pretty elite passer to have no real mobility. And I just don't know that he is elite in that area. And especially for us, for fantasy, like, that's a real concern for me. So for right now, he's more of even if he gets taken first round, he'd be much closer to a end of the first round dynasty pick than an early first round dynasty pick, because he would have to be CJ Stroud, because he can't be any of the other guys, honestly.
So he's the guy that's running in cement shoes. I didn't watch any of the tape on this guy.
More or less, it's not that bad, but he's definitely Matt Ryan, Jared Goff. Yep. Like, he fits that mold.
Yeah, absolutely nothing other than 3 yards to maybe get a first down type of run. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on then from Carson Beck and go on to the next pick. At 1.6, Luther Burden III, Missouri, 5'11", 208 pounds. This, from what I saw, a pretty interesting prospect, and a guy I can't kind of wait to dive more into the tape personally.
Luther Burden's really fun. He was the number 1 receiver in his class coming out of high school, and he showed some really good things as a true freshman. Had a great sophomore campaign. This year's just been okay. Like, he hasn't been as dominant as I kind of expected him to be this year. But I joked that, like, Ted McMillan definitely isn't in the Debo mold. This guy is. Like, this guy is he's built well. He's built more like a running. At 5'11", 208, that sounds more like a running back, really.
Sure does.
He's built well. He's got some good yards after the catch. He could refine some things to be a more true, pure receiver.
Agreed.
But
from what I saw
in the right offense, he could be really fun. He could be really, really fun.
And that's, that was the first comp I thought of when I watched 30 seconds of him. I was like, oh, this dude seems like a Debo type of guy. And he runs hard. He even lined up in the backfield and caught a pass out of the backfield. And to your point, from the very limited amount of stuff that I saw, I was like, but he could use some more kind of routes and stuff like that. So, in my brain, I even questioned immediately, like, was this guy at one point a running back and now he's transitioning to wide receiver? I'm not sure. And I don't know what what his past was, back in high school. Did he do some running back stuff as well or not? But he looks pretty natural with the ball in his hands, which is great for run after the catch and all that kind of stuff. And, but there was still, even though he needs some refining in some of those route running and all that kind of stuff, the movement skills to me are there. I just think he needs to, work on some of that stuff and get some better coaching perhaps at the pro level. And this is one of those guys that could be really fun in the NFL. So excited to kind of watch some more of Luther Burton during this process. At 1-7, Travis Hunter. Speaking of a guy that's exciting to watch, Travis Hunter, wide receiver and maybe a cornerback from Colorado, 6'1", 185 pounds.
Yeah. Speaking of another top tier guy in his class, Luther Burton was the top receiver in his class, but Travis Hunter was the number one overall player in his class, period. Regardless of position, he was the guy. And the biggest question is, like, can you draft him trusting that he gets enough receiver snaps? That's really the only question mark is, and we're not going to know that for a while now. Like, and maybe even draft time, we still might not know. Will teams be able to play him both ways? If not, is he focused on being a receiver? Is he focused on being a corner? Like, there's going to be a lot of question marks there. He's another guy, though, where he could use some refinement in his game at receiver. But, I mean, the body control is stupid good.
Dude,
the hands
the ball, like his ability to go up and grab a ball is...
Yes, high points it. Like,
and the body control around the boundary. Once he has the ball in his hands, his stop-start, his ability to make people miss in the open field, it's all legit, man. And that, again, is a quick synopsis. And really, I haven't been watching a ton of tape on Travis Hunter. This is all stuff that jumps out quickly when you watch his stuff. So I can't wait to kind of dive in deep on a guy like this. And to your point, the immediate question is, how much is he actually going to play on offense? And like you said, none of us are going to know. I wish this was clean and this dude was just a wide receiver, because it would make the eval so much easier. And he'd probably catapult at or near the top of this draft. The way it is now, I think him going at 7 is kind of appropriate, because there's just a lot of unknowns kind of around. There is. So
it's risk reward.
Exciting. It really is. Somebody's going to be either very happy about this draft pick or sad if he spends more time over there on the defensive side of the ball. So we'll see. A lot of time. At 1-8, Quinn Ewers, quarterback, Texas, 6'2", 210 pounds. What do you see so far out of Quinn?
Quinn's done a lot better this year than what I saw out of him last year, because watching the Adonai tape and the Worthy tape was brutal at times. Like, you would see some throws, you're like, oh wow, that's really nice. But there were a lot of throws you're like, dude, what is happening here? He seems to have cleaned up his footwork a little bit. He seems to be more accurate, more decisive. So all of that is good to see. It's going to be tough until I really get into his tape to really know how I feel for sure. But the raw arm talent it's the best in the class. He's got the best arm in the class. That doesn't necessarily mean he's always the most accurate. That doesn't mean he's always the most the best decision maker.
Right.
But the tools there's a
lot.
There.
Yeah, there's a lot more to playing quarterback than just the arm. You need to have the arm. You have to have the requisite arm, but there is a lot more to it as far as ball placement, as far as recognition, making throws, not into double coverage and all that kind of stuff. We'll see if Quinn has cleaned it up, because I know last year it was a struggle, And what I've seen of him this year has not been tape study. It's just been me watching games of Texas while kind of, in spurts here and there. And he's looked a lot better.
Sure.
So I'm hoping to see better tape than I saw last year when we dive in deep there with the quarterbacks. So intriguing. And, 1-8, I think, is appropriate for him as well, because there is just kind of a little bit of a roller coaster built in with him. At
Absolutely.
1-9, Jalen Milroe, quarterback. Is that how you say it? Milroe?
Milroe, yep.
Yep. Okay. Quarterback, Alabama, 6'2", 220 pounds. Man, what I saw out of this guy was lightning in a bottle. You know what I mean? He can make some people miss and do some things with his legs, and he's a decent passer.
He is, when you talk about athletes at quarterback, like, he's even a better athlete probably than Jaden Daniels, which is wild. Like, there's even conversation that, like, if for some reason quarterback didn't work, could he still maybe be a running back in the NFL?
I think he probably could.
And that's crazy to be able to say that. But I mean, he has the build for it. He's not lighting the britches like some of these other guys. Like, he's built well. He's got a strong arm, but it's just the refinement aspect, which at other positions, sometimes you can get away with that. You just can't at quarterback. You've got to get cleaned up. You've got to get refined. And that's the ultimate. He's a lot like an Anthony Richardson. He's going to be a lot of that. The ceiling is stupid, but the floor can drop out right from underneath him.
Yep.
And that's
no doubt about that.
That's going to be the biggest question mark on this guy. It's going to be a fun evaluation process for him.
Yeah. Listen, like I said, I've on a lot of these other prospects, I watched 30 seconds of this guy. So it's a highlight of probably 3 or 4 games or something like that. But the explosion that he shows when either on design runs or forced to, roll out of the pocket and run, it's hard to. You can't teach that. There's no teaching it. You either have it or you don't. He's got it. We'll see if he's got enough in the passing game to kind of make it in the NFL. So that's the biggest question mark, like you were saying. At 110, Quinshawn Judkins, running back, Ohio State, 6 foot, 219 pounds. Explosive, hard to tackle. This guy's a fun running back to watch. You've got to see him a little bit more than some of the other players that we've talked about, obviously, as an Ohio State fan. So, and this is where it gets really fun in this class, because there's 3 or 4 players that fell to the second round that I would be taking in the first right now. So this is where, like, this gets really fun. But Quinshawn Judkins has shown a lot this year at Ohio State. He showed a lot at Ole Miss the year before, but he's been a really good Thunder complement to Treveon Henderson's Lightning. But sometimes when you say Thunder, it makes it seem like they are just big and slow. Like, this guy can move too. He can be his own Lightning too. He can be his own thunderstorm with the lightning involved also. Like, he's got a little bit of both elements, personally.
Yep. And he's got potentially a 3-down skill set. I wouldn't consider him a plus receiver, but he's not deficient in that area. And so I think you feel pretty good about that. So I like Quinshawn Judkins, and the running backs in this class are going to be fascinating. Genty's going to get all the pub, as he should, like, truly, rightfully so. But there are 4 or 5 other running backs that I would have had right up there with the top running backs last year that are not the top guy in this year's class. So that's where this is going to get really fun. And Quinshawn Judkins is one of those guys in that group. For me, top 5 right now, running backs, he's running back 4 for me at the moment.
Okay. And I can see that. Yeah. I mean, I think Quinshawn Judkins, from what I've seen this year, watching him at Ohio State, I probably would have had him ranked as my top guy in last year's class pretty easily. So moving on to 111, let's move on to the next running back, Nicholas Singleton, running back, Penn State, 6 foot, 227 pounds. Whew.
Nick Singleton's a tougher one for me to try to figure out where I'm at on him, and he's going to be he's going to be one of those guys where I'm going to be watching the tape really, really closely on him because he was the top running back in the class coming out. He was the number one guy. Had a good freshman campaign, but just never seemed to really grow from there. He's not put up any eye-popping numbers. He's been in a little bit of a committee at Penn State. And while there's nothing terrible in his game, he just hasn't quite popped like I expected him to. And so for right now, I have him as, I'd have to go back and look. He's at, I want to say, running back 6 or 7 for me. So this is a little higher than I would be willing to take him. But once again, like, none of these guys I have 4 games on, which I need a minimum of 4 games before I can really say confidently like where I'm at on them. I don't have 4 games on any of these guys yet. So we'll see. And honestly, he's another one where I don't have a single all 22 game on him yet. So I can't say confidently where I'm even leaning at the moment, but just from what I've seen, I've been whelmed.
Listen, I watched the Ohio State Penn State game, and I didn't know there was even a running back prospect that I should be paying attention to for Penn State. You know what I mean? And and nobody popped. You know what I mean? There wasn't like somebody where I was like, oh, I got to go. Who the heck is this guy? You know what I mean? So, and typically, if you're drafting a guy in the first round, they should jump off the page a little bit at you,
right?
Even if you're, even if you're only casually watching, like, oh, who the heck is this guy from Penn State? And no one did. So I'm kind of with you. I'm going to reserve judgment, obviously, until we dig in. But I don't necessarily think like, hey, this guy's a must watch or anything at this point in the process. But it's early. So 112. Moving on to 112. Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver, Ohio State, 6'1", 205. Emeka, man.
Yeah,
we thought he was coming out last year, and here he is.
And he's a very good player. It's been a weird year for him because you would think like, all right, Marvin Harrison's gone. This is Emeka Egbuka's year to shine. Well, they brought in a guy named Jeremiah Smith, who, surprisingly enough, could end up being better than Marvin Harrison Jr. So, like,
might already be. Who knows? No, I'm just kidding.
Might be like he's nuts. So, like, poor Emeka Egbuka, but he's a guy that does everything the right way. He's always in the right spots. He's got solid hands. He's a reliable player. It wouldn't shock me if he went in the first round. I see him more as probably a second round NFL draft guy, but I think he'll be right in that range of like, okay, does he go somewhere between pick 24 and pick 44? Like somewhere in that range, end of the first, beginning of the second in the real NFL draft. But I think he could be like, if he went to, I was thinking about teaming him up with another former Ohio State wide receiver in Terry McLaurin. Like, put him in Washington, let him operate out of the slot there. Like, that would be a really nice fit for him. So I like this player. I'm not in love. I don't think he's elite, but I think he's a very good player.
Agreed. From what I have seen of him for the past 4 years, he is a good, not great player. And what does that translate to the NFL? I don't know yet. I'm not gonna say right now that he's only gonna be X or Y or whatever. But my feeling is he's probably gonna be a guy that is either operating on the slot or a number 2 guy. He's not like an alpha for any NFL offense. But I'm gonna reserve that judgment until later. So don't stick me to that or hold me to that quite yet. I just want to dig in.
All right. So we're into the second round now. We'll probably go through these quickly. But but I think it's good to at least know the names. So I'll say like a quick little piece, but we're not going to go too deep into these guys just for time's sake.
Sweet. At 2-1, Omarion Hampton, Omarion Hampton, running back UNC, 6 foot 220. Go.
My RB2 in the class, love this kid, would easily be a first rounder for me. So I am a very, very big fan of his. Physical downhill runner, type of guy that I tend to like. Nice. He fits that mold.
Nice. At 2-2, Treveon Henderson, running back Ohio State, 5'10", 208. Nice explosive player.
He seems like a guy for me that is just going to be such a good NFL player. I could see him being in the Jahmyr Gibbs type mold, the Devon Achane type mold, the guy that's just maybe doesn't get a ridiculous amount of carries, but does a lot with them, but then is also deployed a lot in the receiving game. Like, I think he would be great in one of those kind of roles.
Agreed. 2-3, Isaiah Bond.
Yeah, you remember
Isaiah Bond?
Bond.
Yes, I should. I really blew the Bond.
Dang it.
Isaiah Bond. Texas wide receiver, 5'11", 180 pounds. This dude is smell you later fast, by the way.
Yep. He's Xavier Worthy once again. Same.
Holy cow.
Same guy, same team, same speed, just rinse, wash, repeat.
Yep. Definitely. He might, but he's got a little bit more size, at least now on paper. He's got a little bit more size.
We'll see when he weighs in.
Yep. At 2-4, Devin Neal, running back Kansas, 5'11", 215.
Another physical running back. He's done a lot of good things this season. He's not going to be like Treveon Henderson where he's like hitting crazy home runs, but he's very compact, very good runner of the football. Could make a team very happy with that like end of the third round type of guy, beginning of the fourth round, NFL draft wise. I could see him being a very good value, and one of those players where later we're like, man, I really liked him. I should have had him higher in my rankings. Like I could see him being
very Ray Davis ish.
Yeah. Like I think he's got more than Davis, but yes, he would fit into that kind of category.
Okay. At 2-5, we're getting our first tight end on a tight end premium. Tyler Warren, tight end, Penn State, 6'6", 257.
I'll say this: I have done almost zero study on tight end. I've seen a little bit on Tyler Warren, and I know that he's considered by many the tight end 2 in the class. I'm surprised Colston Loveland isn't the first one off the board. He's pretty much a consensus round 1 tight end, and I don't think there is any other round 1 tight end. So I'm surprised to see Colston Loveland not the first guy off the board. But Tyler Warren, actually, speaking of the Ohio State game, there were a couple plays that he looked pretty good against the Buckeyes in the receiving game. So interesting player for sure.
He was a guy that popped a little bit when I was watching that game. We won't get to Colston for a little bit, so let's go through the next one. 2-6, Drew Aller. Aller, is that how you say his name?
Yeah, Drew Aller.
Yeah, that just looks weird.
Aller.
Aller, quarterback, Penn State, 6'5", 238, kind of a prototypical size guy, right?
Yeah, project player. Got the tools, lacks the production.
Indeed. That's at 2-7. We have another tight end, not named Colston Loveland. It's Gunnar Helm, tight end, Texas, 6'5", 250.
I'll say this: this does not happen very often. I know nothing about this guy. I don't know anything about him. So maybe this is a good pick, but once again, I'm very shocked that it wasn't Colston Loveland.
Well, let's get on to 2-8, Colston Loveland, tight end.
Hey, there he is.
6'5", 245.
Yeah, this is the guy I do know about, and he is basically the only receiving option in Michigan right now, and they still seem to have a hard time guarding him. He's a very good tight end. He's going to go in the first round. And it wouldn't shock me if he ends up back with his old head coach with the Chargers. I think Justin Herbert would be very happy.
Yep, for sure. At 2-9, Caleb Johnson, running back Iowa, 6 foot, 225 pounds.
This is a guy that is not being talked about much at all, but I love that he went here. I think this is a great pick. This guy is putting up stupid numbers, and he's in the Big Ten. It's not like he's playing at some random school. He's got the side, like he's a big boy. I've heard some interesting comps. Like I've heard people talking, like whispering Lev Bell, which is a really interesting comp. I have not seen enough to say that I agree with that necessarily, but the fact that it's even being whispered is intriguing to me. So he's one of those guys that I'm really excited to like dig into his game and see how he's putting up these kind of numbers where we don't traditionally see this out of Iowa. So I'm excited.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Anytime there's a solid player coming out of Iowa, I mean, it's good school. I mean, they just never seem to do well, but they produce NFL talent.
They do. They do.
So let's move on to the next person here. 210, Kyron Lacey, wide receiver, LSU, 6'2", 213 pounds. I already like the guy. I don't know.
Yep, LSU wide receiver.
But I like him.
Yeah, he's an older wide receiver, but he was kind of the third guy there last year. Has an opportunity to be the main guy this year. Overall, has done some good things. Not been elite, but he's had a good season. Garrett Nussmeier, their quarterback, the two of them seem to have a good rapport, and he's a good, like he can run some good routes, get open, pretty clean player, which you would expect for a little bit older guy.
Nice. At 211, we're going to go Trey Harris, wide receiver, Ole Miss, 6'2", 210 pounds. Some good size on these guys, anyway, huh?
Yeah, both at running back and receiver, we've got some like girth this year, which is nice. He's definitely one of those big play guys. He's a guy that can make some big plays down the field. He's not going to make you miss. I shouldn't say that. He's not a guy that's going to like shake you to get open or like be like super clean, but he's got good speed and good size to make big plays downfield.
Sounds like a nightmare waiting to happen.
Yep.
Sounds like a Treylon Burks waiting to happen.
Oh, don't say it. Don't say it.
So moving on to 212, Kyle. Running back Rutgers, 5'9", 209 pounds. I'm not even going to try that dude's name.
It's like Mongi or something. I get it wrong too. Like I tried. I couldn't even.
His name is Kyle. He's a running back from Rutgers. It's 5'9", 209 pounds. Just look it up if you want to know who I'm talking about.
Yep. This was somebody early on in the season I was watching, and I literally texted Jared. I was like, I don't know about this kid. Like, I don't know anything about him, but every play I keep watching, I like. And he's like, yeah, he's actually pretty nice. So he's a player that's kind of risen up boards this season, and he's the Rutgers offense. Like he's the Rutgers offense. But some good strength for not being like huge necessarily. He's got good strength, can make some guys miss. Like, he's interesting.
Mark him down as interesting. His name's interesting. There's no way in hell I know how to say it right now. I'm so bad at pronouncing names and sounding out words. Oh God,
it's
not my forte.
All right. Well,
yeah.
That wraps up our. We did a little buy sell. We did a little college football talk. I think we got the nerd herd everything they could want.
Absolutely, and the free listeners as well.
There we go. If you're not part of the nerd herd, you should be. You should do
Absolutely. Do it. It's better. Do it.
Do it. You
Adios.
won't.
Adios.